Greetings and salutations, Dopey Nation. I wanna take a walk around the world. I wonder would it do me any good? Until I get some money in my pocket, then I guess I'll just have to walk around my neighborhood. But I wanna be good so bad. I wanna be so good, so bad, so bad. I wanna be good so bad. But bad desire is all I ever had. And I wanna take a ride up in the sky and watch this aeroplane just pass me by. And I wanna see a Learjet liner take a dive just to show all of these people what it means to be alive. And I wanna be good so bad. I wanna be so good, so bad, so bad. I wanna be good so bad. But bad desire is all I ever had.
So thanks guys for asking me. Sorry that this meeting is being recorded. Is what happens at the beginning of every one of my piano lessons for like a corporate job. So she's going to treat you like students. So yeah, my name is Jackie and I'm an addict and an alcoholic. And
hi, Jackie.
Hi, Ryan. And I'm really grateful to be here. I think I shared a little bit when Ryan told his story that like I'll get to it because I'm going to talk about my journey in recovery and then kind of my journey in out of traditional recovery and my recovery from recovery. And you know, I mentioned that Ryan is really like loves the podcast, and when I decided to leave the 12 steps, you know, our 12-step programs, he was really kind of gracious about it because of this podcast. He was like, if there's anything that Dopey's, you know, really showed me is that there's like not one way to recovery. And I don't think that would have been like Ryan's response earlier than finding Dopey. So I'm super grateful for all of you guys. And I'm just glad to be here and to share my story. And yeah, so you guys are catching me at an interesting point in my kind of journey because I kind of officially decided I was done with the 12 steps or 12-step programs like around February. And since then I've been kind of trying to figure out like what my program looks like instead, because I'm not so, I'm not in a place to say that I think that I can do it with nothing. And my, you know, my alcoholism and my drug abuse is definitely out there and like ready to kill me. I was just so miserable. And I do want to preface a little bit that like, by no means am I trying to say that I think that the 12 steps are bad or that someone shouldn't do them. It's just that's not where I am happy anymore. And so I don't want to discourage anybody if that's your path. And like, I absolutely think they're worth doing. And anyway, I don't want to give more prefaces than are necessary. So, yeah. So I was born in outside of Atlanta, Georgia in 1988. So I'm 32 now. And my dad was an Army brat and my mom is the children of Italian immigrants. And she grew up in Boston. And I grew up very Catholic. I think that's like probably the most salient detail of my childhood. Like very achievement oriented and discipline oriented. And just, you know, I remember like there was a certain age where I just stopped asking my parents if I could do things with certain friends because I knew their answer was going to be no. They're really lovely and like kind people and very well-intentioned people, but they were really strict parents. And, you know, I think they did the best with what they had. And like, I certainly did not want for anything except for attention and love in a different way than they were capable of giving it, you know? I grew up fairly like affluent. I'm not going to pretend like I didn't, I did. And I went to Catholic schools and I did the whole thing, you know, and I remember being in 6th grade and it was my last year in public school before my parents really wanted me to go to this school called Marist, which is a private Catholic school. And I was talking to someone who was saying that he was Catholic too, because this is like my only touchstone to people. I like didn't really have much more. And, you know, he was like, I was like, oh, well, what church do you go to? This is my fun small talk in 6th grade. And he told me, and I was like, well, I've never seen you there. And he was like, yeah, well, we go on like Christmas and Easter. And that idea to me was just like, what the fuck is that? Like, if you don't go every Sunday and like some Wednesdays, then like, you know, what are you even doing here? And it was just super strict. And my mom had some really bizarre ideas about, well, I guess they really aren't bizarre in the terms of Catholicism, but like really firm ideas about sexuality and when it was appropriate. And the appropriate time was never, until you got married, and otherwise just never. Like, just have nothing sexual ever. Don't learn about it. Don't talk about it on TV. Don't insinuate it. Just is a really healthy environment. And I've since kind of come to believe that like the way that she treated puberty and my body developing led to me kind of thinking that that was not something that was allowed to happen. And in 7th grade, you know, the same year I went to this new Catholic school, I very vividly remember deciding that I was going to, you know, purge everything that I ate. And so like, and it's just like my first memory of drinking, like, that's how vivid it is. I remember the bathroom stall, you know, I remember the decision, and I remember being like, this is a turning point in my life. And it was, and you know, like that was just the way I decided I was going to cope with the world. And it went not well, but like, it's just all I really had. And so, you know, pretty early on, I guess I was probably like 12, I just developed an eating disorder that ran my life. And for anyone who also struggled with that, you know, like a lot of the nature of that is being really deceptive and lying a lot about what you're doing and where you're going, and like, are you okay? And all that kind of stuff. And another big thing with my mom was like, you don't lie. And so I already was just digging this hole of like, I'm a terrible person and I'm a liar. And I'm bad because, you know, I like boys, and I might like to do something with a boy someday. And, you know, my mom would like read all my journals and read me about me like liking a guy and wanting to kiss a guy. And we would have like a sit down about that, and why would I want that? And all these kind of like, I won't use the word traumatic, but like really like kind of scarring experiences around just like being a teenager. And looking back, it was all so normal. And like, I'm sure if my mom, you know, looking back, like would probably be like, God, those were the good old days, because shit went south, you know. And I was a really like tightly wound, really disciplined, like achievement oriented kid. And so, yeah, I played classical piano, and I guess it's worth mentioning, in high school, I had my first drink. I went on a trip to Europe with like this student organization. And it was with multiple schools from the Atlanta area. And so, you know, I was introduced to some other kids who were like rising juniors and seniors, and I was a rising freshman. So, you know, like they were cooler and older and wiser and knew the ways of alcohol. And they told me that we were gonna like drink on the last night because you could. And I was like, okay, I guess that's happening. And in my brain, I had a tolerance because every Sunday I drink wine for communion. And like that made a lot of sense to me. And so I drank, I think like 7 shots of vodka at 15. And it went about as well as you can expect. And, you know, I just like puked my brains out and ran around Madrid like an idiot, and promptly told like the counselors or whoever was like chaperoning this thing in the morning that I had food poisoning, as they like knowingly looked at me and just like kind of waved their hand and were like, get on the plane. So that was my first drink, and it scared me, and I wrote about it in a code in my journal so my parents would never find out. And And then I didn't drink till college because it scared the shit out of me. And like, I was scared of them and I just didn't want to do it. And so I went to the University of Georgia on a scholarship, and I got into the music school. And my dad, my brother, I have an older brother. I guess it's worth mentioning that my mom had an eating disorder too, and doctors told her that she wouldn't be able to have kids. And so my older brother is 6 years older than me, and he's adopted. And then 6 years later, like me, the miracle / mistake comes along, which I think is like such a great metaphor for, you know, me as an addict. Like, it just depends how you want to look at it. I'm either a miracle or a mistake on any given day. And my brother went to Duke University, which more in retrospect, my parents often told me that my brother wasn't that smart and things like that. And then like only recently I was like, my brother went to Duke. Like, how not smart could he have been? Like, I don't think he was not smart. I don't think that was true. But yeah, my dad told me that, you know, if I didn't want to go to any university that expensive and if I wanted to go in state, then, you know, he would be cool with that. So I did that. And I drank pretty much like a college kid. I met a guy in the music school who was a graduate student. And we started dating, and you know, he had already done his undergrad, and so like he could buy booze, and so I kind of had this like insulated environment of not having to do the whole like bar scene fake ID thing. I just drank with my boyfriend and my friends in the music school, and like the way that looked was incredibly nerdy. It was like Pinot Noir and board games and listening to them talk about opera. And like at this point in my life, I really want to roll my eyes at that, but that's what my college experience looked like at that point in time. And I remember him telling me, this boyfriend, you know, he really loved the band Phish. And I remember him telling me like on one of our first dates or something that he had dropped acid at a Phish show. And I was scandalized, like mortified that he would do such hardcore drugs such as acid. And I like remember having him like make this promise he would never do hard drugs, and like definitely came back to bite me on the ass. But just a fun little window into like what my intentions for my life were. And throughout this period of time, you know, I'm still a high achieving person. That is how I feel like I experience love, and that is how I experience my worth. And, you know, classical music is an incredibly competitive environment, and there really isn't like a good enough, you know, like you're never done practicing, you're never done with those things. So it was always and I've always kind of been like slightly better than average. Like, I think I'm fairly smart and I'm a pretty good pianist, but when, you know, looking at the entire tier of, you know, being a university musician, like I'm fine. And so I was never really like the top of the class in that way that I always wanted to be. And I wanted to be special, and I wanted to be the smartest. And I also wanted to be the prettiest and the thinnest. And I was none of those things. And I had started seeing this psychiatrist back when I was in high school at my mom's suggestion, because I told them I was having trouble with bulimia. And this doctor was like, he was up there in age then, which would have been the early 2000s. And I think, you know, that generation of psychiatry is just like, there is a medicine for that. And so I remember on our first appointment, he was like, here are some drugs I could put you on. And at the time that was really off-putting. And so I, you know, said yes to like an SSRI, and we went on our merry way. But like, I put that in the back of my brain. And somewhere along the way, you know, I'm diagnosed with depression and anxiety and ADHD and all that fun stuff. And around my senior year of college, I'm like so miserable in this eating disorder. And I took an Adderall for a study weekend. And it was that experience that people talk about, you know, like the heavens parted. And I had that distinct feeling of like, this is how God intended it to be. like I felt like Wonder Woman, and like everything was possible, and I was smart, and I was energized, and I could practice for 7 hours, and I was going to get thin, and like and I could drink more, because I was always that person who like fell asleep at 12 and was then called like a wet blanket. And so all of these problems were about to be solved. So I went back to that doctor and I was like, that time you diagnosed me with ADHD, I think you were right. And you should give me that Adderall you talked about. And he gave me Adderall and Vyvanse in one fell swoop. And he was like, if this is not the right dosage, then just come back to me and we'll up it. And I was like, okay, sounds like a plan. And that was my fall semester of senior year of college. And I got the Adderall probably in like September. And by December, I had dropped probably 10 or 15 pounds, which on my frame looks pretty drastic. And I went home for Christmas and my parents were just like, what has happened? And somewhere through that, I drained my savings on like Adderall fueled shopping sprees. And things went downhill like almost immediately. And I never took them as prescribed. It just didn't happen. And around January or February of that year, that school year, I got really tired and like the Adderall wasn't working the way I wanted it to work anymore. And I went to the doctor and I had mono, probably because of like what I had done to my body in a short period of time. And so I dropped, I had enough credits to finish my senior year, except for German, a German class. And so I was like, I'm going to take that in the summer and I'm just going to take this semester off. And throughout that period of time, like just being in a college town, sick, with a bunch of Adderall and an illness that by its nature is like, all you have to do is sleep. Just please fucking sleep. Just go to sleep. I was like, nope, I'm going to keep taking Adderall. And one of these mornings it's going to feel better and I'm going to feel great. And that did not happen. I have never been more depressed in my life. Like still, like through the next 10 years that happened afterward, it was just so dark. And summer semester came around, German class came and went, and I didn't go. My anxiety was just insane. And like every time I missed a class, it became a reason to not go anymore. I don't know. Y'all know, like the logic was there at the time. It just doesn't make sense now. So it's not really worth explaining. So I left and I took a job teaching with my previous piano teacher, who was like, kind of like a second mother to me. And this is about the window of time where my funnier kind of dopey stories happen. I moved back into this condo because my grandmother, my mom's mom, had just become like ill enough that she needed to go to like a retirement home. And so they wanted to sell her condo, but they were like, you can live in it for this period of time and like pay us rent until we figure out what we want to do with it. And so I moved in, and this guy from from middle school pops back up in my life on Facebook message to tell me he had like a dream about me. And I'm like, that sounds great. You should come over. And I kept this dude as a friend on Facebook because I thought he was the biggest idiot. Like I thought his Facebook statuses were the funniest examples of just how like ridiculous someone could be. And like, I was very like, kind of elitist in the way that I looked at people. I still kind of am, but I'm trying to get better about it. And I was just like this dumb fucking stoner. And my priorities had shifted enough to the point where when he was like, I'm in town and I have booze, like I was like, you should come over now. And I remember having this distinct thought of like, I am not attracted to this person. I have nothing in common with him. We have nothing to talk about, but he's coming here with Maker's Mark, and that seems like enough. And in that logic, a 6-month relationship was born. And essentially this relationship was like a giant fuck you to my parents, because he represented everything that they hated. And, he just like represented all the party that I felt like I never got out of my system and I was never allowed to have. And like, he was just like balls to the wall, like I'm going to live however I want. And I was just like, I want some of that. And honestly, that's kind of what I've been chasing my entire life, is just like someone give me permission to just live my life. And it just went horribly wrong for the rest of my life. So at one point he tells me that a little gem is that he had just gotten out of prison for like small time dealing weed. And he somewhere down the road had like procured a spore print of magic mushrooms. And he was like, we're going to grow them here in your grandmother's condo. I was like, that sounds like a great idea. And for anyone who has tried, that the process for growing mushrooms is like really extensive and like it has to be very sterile. So I would go teach small children piano with my wine in one hand, like in the thermos, and my purse full of like pharmaceuticals in the other. And then I would come home to this condo full of like my boyfriend and his friends who are naked in their boxers because everything has to be sterile, cooking mushrooms. And at some point they start growing. And my parents come over to like check on the condo or whatever. And they were like, what the hell is this? And so I told my parents that I was trying to get more eco-friendly, and that this was my urban composting project. And they bought that, or at least claimed to. I don't know why, them being who they are, they would think that wasn't true. And so, I just told him it was urban composting. And so, I did a bunch of mushrooms with that boyfriend, and eventually things really just started falling apart. And, somewhere along the way, like the way things, I don't know, I'm trying to say things, I'm trying to express things about things I feel awkward and sad about. So I'm not trying to, like, if I say something offensive, I'm really not trying to. It's just like my bad coping mechanism. But essentially, like, I'm on a lot of Xanax and booze and Adderall and stoned, and I put myself in compromising positions, and I got compromised. As a woman, I put myself in kind of one of those positions that, he wasn't there to protect me, and shit went south. And that was in January of 2012. And so that was kind of like a first bottom that I immediately just buried. I wasn't really willing to face what had happened. And so I was just going to keep staying as anesthetized as possible. And like, so when I say that, like, the window of it being fun was really short, it was really short. Like, it was basically a year of where it was kind of like fun, and then it just went like immediately south. And so that January, I stopped responding to phone calls, and I stopped showing up for work. And my parents got wind of it, and they basically just like scooped me up and put me in their home, the home that I grew up in, and were like, we got to figure something out here. And the next few months are kind of a blur. But eventually they go to see a doctor at the recommendation of some friend who's like a big wig addictionologist in Atlanta. And he tells them, your daughter has an eating disorder and is on Adderall. I won't see her until she goes to treatment. And so in May 2012, I went to rehab for the first time. And it didn't take. It's the short way of saying that. Like, I didn't get it. And I was really confused because I'm sitting here at 23 with my like pocket full of pills that are prescribed to me, which, I'm not taking them as prescribed, but they're prescribed to me. And I'm sitting next to, 15-year-olds who are talking about their heroin problem and their dope kits. And I was like, I do not equate. I don't relate. I don't understand. And, I'm also being told, because it's a 12-step based facility, like you are addicted to everything. I know you haven't tried everything, but you are. You just don't know it yet. And, you need to be abstinent for the rest of your life. And that was incredibly confusing for me. And I mean, I know people can relate, but it was just like in that moment, the entire paradigm shift. And I was like, what just happened to my fucking life? I still haven't gotten to live it for myself. And now you're telling me I need to live it for these other people. Because I just couldn't, it didn't compute. And the best thing to come out of that situation was that they sent me to somewhere from this first facility to work on my eating disorder. And like, I will say that experience was really positive for me. I met people who I was ready to say I had a problem with that. I was not ready to say I had a problem with drugs. And, I was like at a point in my addiction where I just felt further apart from, everybody had these war stories, like dopey stories that I did not relate to. And I found myself like elaborating on my own stories and things like that. And, I should follow up on the mushrooms. My parents, when they picked me up, eventually kind of figured out what was happening. And so they tried to pour the mushrooms out into their backyard. And it doesn't work that way. The mushrooms will sprout. And so for a little while, my parents in their Catholicism had magic mushrooms just sprouting in their backyard, which is amazing. It still makes me laugh. Oh God, it's so great. So that's the culmination of that story. So I'm glad that got a laugh react. Because it's just all downhill from there. But so I'm gonna try and push a little faster through the rest of this, but all I really heard was the rest of your life needs to change, but also the people I was in rehab were kind of like, why are you here? You don't fit, you don't belong. So that message still of you don't belong, my stories aren't cool enough for them. And so my whole world needs to change and I need to join these people, but also these people don't think I belong. And so where the fuck do I belong? And so basically I just went out and did a shit ton more research and I accumulated all of those, yets that people talk about. They told me I don't need to drink anymore. So I drank in my car and drove around and I accumulated 3 DUIs right in a row in 2013. And I went to jail and, I just really spun downward and my parents were very much we're going to fix this with treatment. And so I just went to rehab, boom, 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 in succession over and over and over again. It was their Band-Aid, here, take her. My mom was looking, and we all have, but my mom was looking for that puzzle piece, at one point, she was like, were you raped? And I was like, yes, I was raped. But that's also not why I have this problem. Please, she just needed something to fit, a key to turn, a puzzle piece or whatever. She didn't answer why her good little girl had just totally become this different person. And I met this guy I did at that point, I was just accumulating rehab romances. And I convinced my parents that I should go to sober living in Asheville. And I got a little bit of time together and moved out with this guy and some of the other people from sober living into what was supposed to be, our staying sober house and quickly turned into a trap house. And he was a heroin addict, an IV heroin addict, and he relapsed. And for a while, I was really riding on this, I am the sanctimonious, girlfriend, I am murdered by his drug use. And I will, I don't know, I rode around with him to score drugs, and I would watch him shoot up. But it was I just got this own sense of worth out of it because I wasn't using. And, I was better than him, and then one day he shot up and he still had some and he was like, you want me to shoot you up? And I was like, yes, I do. And that was that, and so for the next 6 months or so, he would shoot me up and then we would smoke a bunch of crack and that was just my life in Asheville at that point. And it really, like, somehow I kind of made it out, like, unscathed from heroin and crack, which I, like, it's not my message that that can happen to you. I don't think it's like, it's not my endorsement of it. It just, it's just kind of how it happened for me. And really, like, what happened in that period is I became so much of a shell of, like, who I was as a person, that this dude that I really had nothing in common with other than drugs at this point, like, he was really, like, controlling, and I just acquiesced, it's just like, I guess this is my life now. And at one point I was supposed to be doing community service for my third DUI. And I was doing it at this, like, pet shelter in Asheville, and I would walk, I can't drive. I have 3 DUIs, so, I'm walking to bus stops, and, as it happens, I ended up being followed by 2 guys, and they pushed me over, like, the median into, like, the woods that was, or, like, this kind of wooded area, and sexually assaulted me. And like, I just remember thinking, like, I'm gonna die here, like, I'm gonna be murdered here. And like, they weren't coherent thoughts, but, like, when I had enough distance from it, just, like, kind of acknowledging that, like, I didn't really want to, that's not how I wanted things to go out. Like, and, suffice to say, like, that wasn't it. I wasn't done. I tried to follow this guy to Arkansas, which, like, no offense to Arkansas, but also, like, full offense to Arkansas. I don't belong there. And, like, I eventually, I think he got fed up with me and called my dad and was like, just bring her home. And so I came home, and my parents were like, if you want to try and figure this out, it's on you. And they lived 2 miles away from the AA clubhouse, and just to fucking get out of their house, I would walk 2 miles to a meeting and sit down and, like, go to a bunch of meetings in a row, and I would go home. And I had been to NA before. Obviously I knew about the steps. I had never really worked them with any kind of, like, earnesty or really trying, but I was desperate at that point. Throughout my journey, I decided that drinking rubbing alcohol would be a good idea at multiple points and times, and I would always kind of end up in the hospital because rubbing alcohol is poison, in case you don't know, and they will put you on suicide watch if you try to drink it. So don't do that. Yeah, I just remember sitting in this beginner's meeting and just, like, sobbing, like, I don't understand what has happened to my life. And, the obligatory, like, well, keep coming back. And, like, but I did meet this one girl who had 90 days, and we really connected, and I met a lot of amazing people through her. And she said, I think I know a woman who could be your sponsor. And it was Halloween, and I met this girl, Missy, and she was dressed as Napoleon Dynamite. And I was like, this is the kind of weird that I can get behind. Like, I like this person. And she was a great sponsor. And we went through the steps, and, they definitely did good things for me. I've emotionally matured in a lot of ways somewhere along the way, and I have nothing to attribute to this to other than a spiritual awakening. Like, I was done with my eating disorder. And if you had told me that at some point in my life, I would have been like, that's not going to happen. Like, I am never going to be over this. And it was just lifted, like the way they talk about it in the rooms. And, so there a lot of grace was given. But in terms of, like, continuous sobriety, I was not getting that. And I would put, like, 9 months together. And then I would get, like, a year, and I would drink in these, like, really big blowout ways that would pretty much always exclusively land me in the hospital. Like, I am the kind of drinker who can kill themselves, like, pretty quickly. And this last I was already with Ryan, and I guess they told him like they couldn't find a pulse. Like, you know, I was dead on the table, I guess. And like, and that was certainly a wake up call, but it wasn't any different than any other wake up call I'd ever had. Because I knew you could die from this thing, and I knew other people would die. I've lost friends to overdoses and accidents, and I just wasn't getting that relief from the program anymore. And I started to really feel the stigma of relapse, and feeling like because I would relapse, somehow my story was open for anybody to ask me questions about. So lots of like, well, what are you going to do differently, or what happened, or you know, and not for people I care about, because they're entitled to that, and I'm welcoming to give that. But like, if I share about my relapse in a meeting, I don't need you, random fucking person, to be like, so what happened? You know, so that I know to not do it. I'm like, fuck you. I don't owe you this. Go out and figure it out and do your own research. Like, I am not going to be the, you know, exemplar that you can hold up and see like, well, I'm not doing what Jackie did, so I must be doing okay. And like, I could feel that more and more in the reasons that people would ask, like, what are you going to do differently? Or what are you going to like, I'm like, that question's for you. It's not for me. You don't care about what I'm going to do differently. You need to know how it's either not going to happen to you, or that you can feel better, you know? And so, none of those things are specific to the 12 steps, and it doesn't say anything about that in the big book, but that was the culture that I was starting to experience. And just checked. Okay. So yeah, so what ended up happening kind of in this last year was a number of things. So I had my last drink, and I was working with a sponsor who I like, but that previous sponsor, the Napoleon Dynamite sponsor, at somewhere down the road was like, I think you might need another sponsor. Like, I'm not sure I can call you on your bullshit. And that was fair. You know, I was cool with that. But I found someone who I like, and I still like, but she was like, we do the steps a little bit differently. I was like, okay, you know, at this point, I'm still in the like, it's me, I'm not doing the steps correctly. Like, I was still very convinced of that at that point. And so I was like, all right, bring it on. And she gave me this set of like 20 index cards for the 4th step. And the first card said, what is the most disgusting / shameful thing that you have ever done, including but not limited to rape, incest, bestiality, homosexuality? And I was like, what? Come again? The idea that a newcomer with trauma, or a gay newcomer, or anybody could ask someone to be their sponsor and have that be their first 4-step experience was traumatizing to me. And like, I was so angry, I could not come to terms with it. And I'm still not really past this point of like, it shouldn't be a crapshoot. You know, in this program where we're entrusted to someone who's going to take us through and help us to get to a spiritual experience, it shouldn't be a crapshoot whether I have Napoleon Dynamite who helps me get there, or this set of cards that, like, if I was in a different place in my life, I could 100% read as being raped was the most shameful, disgusting thing I've ever done. That's bullshit. Around the same time, I watched the NXIVM documentary on HBO, which it was like, if you haven't watched it, you should watch it. But I was like, oh, I would have joined that cult. And, you know, I found myself relating to it, not because I think AA is a cult, but because I felt like I was similar to those people because they couldn't ask questions. And I felt like I wasn't allowed to ask questions without being told to be more willing, or that I hadn't admitted that I'm powerless, or I just didn't have enough time, or, you know, this, that, and the other. Like, you know, in some way, I was the problem it couldn't possibly be that like maybe this process doesn't work for me in guaranteeing permanent sobriety. It's worked in a number of ways in terms of like how I feel about myself. But in terms of like, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. You know, I thoroughly followed it, and I have not gotten, you know, to this day, like years and years and years. That's not my story yet. I would like it to be. And so I left, and I knew I wanted something. And so I tried Outsmart Recovery, which I think is fine. And I became a facilitator because I'm trying to go back to school to become a counseling psychologist. And I thought that would look good on a resume. And I've been reading a lot of books over this last year. And, you know, like, I have a certain amount of time, and it's less than I've had at some points, and it's more than I've had at others. And I am the happiest that I have ever been. And I also told Ryan at one point, like, I feel for the first time in my life, like if I don't want to take a drink or a drug, it's not going to just happen. Like, it just always felt like it was going to be around the corner. It was going to pop up there, and I would have no choice. And that's how my relapses felt. Like, you know, I was there, the booze was there, and it happened. And like, it was the first time in my life that I was like, oh, I don't think it's going to happen that way anymore, you know, and that to me feels powerful. So like, for me, you know, I understand why we, you know, need to say that we're powerless over this substance. But I don't want to feel powerless all the time. I need to feel empowered in order to make it through this thing, or else I'm just going to feel like I am a slave all the time. And like, not just to the substance, but to the whims of the world. And like, I can't do that. Like, I'm trying to live at this point, and so that's just not going to work for me. You know, and like, I keep trying to kind of figure out like this formula of like what's been working for me and why I'm so happy, because I want to give it away. And like, I was so happy to be able to do this because I knew I didn't have to like stick to any kind of like 12-step byline, because I'm like thrilled with I'm thrilled with my sobriety right now, which is something that I was never able to say. But I can't tell you like how I got here specifically. I can't tell you it was that I did a really thorough 4th step, because, you know, I've done about 5 of those. And I can't tell you it was this one amends process. And I can't tell you it was any one book. You know, it's just been the culmination of like motivation. And, you know, I would look at people in the rooms, my husband included, and like, I would really envy the people who got to come there on their own terms, who got to like say like, and this is like probably a biased perspective. I understand that that's not how it really is for everybody, but like, I would look at certain people and be like, they got to say they're done. I never had that moment. You know, my parents put me in rehab, and then it was an expectation for 10 years. And I don't know. I had that epiphany where I was just like, if you want to be done, like that decision has to be made for you. It can't be because you're going to marry Ryan. It can't be because your parents are tired of seeing you fail. It can't be for any other reason than you. And I'd heard that 100 times. And like, I wish I could tell you why it clicked at some point, but it just did. And it did. It did when I gave myself permission to do it my way, you know, and that was really important for me, to just give myself permission to live my life. And like, if I fail, then I fail, and I don't owe you an apology for that, because if I have this disease, then, you know, like, I would look at how people would look at my eating disorder, you know, and it was always just like, oh, I'm so sorry. You know, if I was to lapse in my eating disorder, people would be like, I'm sorry, how can I support you? If I say that I've relapsed in my addiction, you know, some people are like, how can I support you? But a lot of other people are like, well, what the fuck happened? You know, in varying degrees of that question. And like, at some point, the injustice of that really dawned on me, you know, like, I don't owe you an answer to that question if I fail. I only owe myself answers if something goes wrong. And it is incumbent upon me to figure it out if I want to live, and I want to live my best life. So yeah, I mean, like, it's a really bizarre place to like wrap up, and I'm sure I'll think of things that I wish I had said. It's just, I am 100% in the middle of this thing, in terms of not like the middle of the bed, like in the middle of like, is it a spiritual solution? Is it not? Opinion changes daily. Do I need to work a program? Can I just kind of do it? Don't really know. Like, the things that I've landed on are that it means something to me to be able to share my experience and have it resonate with people. And it means something to me to live for myself. And I'm not going to set these expectations for myself based on what I think other people want from me. You know, that I like Glennon Doyle a lot, and she says that there's no one-way liberation, you know, and so like I liberated myself, and hopefully other people are like able to come with me. I think, I won't speak for him, but I think that he has found more peace in like letting me do my own thing than hopefully, you know, than hoping that the 12 steps work for me this time. And I think it has given certain friends of mine permission to call me and be like, I don't actually know if I like the 12 steps anymore. And I wasn't able to say that to people before. Like, I hope that other people feel liberated by that, but it's definitely working for me at this point. So, stay strong, Dopey Nation, and fucking toodles for Chris.
I wanna take a walk around the world. I wonder if it do me any good. Until I get some money in my pocket, then I guess I'll just walk around my neighborhood. But I wanna be good so bad. Wanna be so good, so bad, so bad. Wanna be good so bad. But bad desire's all I've ever had. I wanna take a ride up in the sky. Watch the aeroplanes just pass me by. I wanna see a Learjet liner take a dive, just to show these people what it means to be alive. But I wanna be good so bad. I wanna be so good, so bad, so bad. I wanna be good so bad. But bad desire's all I've ever